to call up a journalist from the Daily Mail, Peter Oborne. I'm sure he can defend his whole claim. He's the author of the Chilcot report, and I'm sure he's already read the whole Chilcot report and will be able to summarise it in 7 minutes for us.
I think the first thing to say is that as a member of as the media establishment, I agree and concur with very many of the comments you've made. There was a problem. I mean, the Iraq War is a absolutely classic case of the problem of the herd mentality, of the failure to question, of the lack of, and by the way, I'm including myself in this. I did this as a meeting of Stop the War the other night as well, and we may have had it. It's a painful thing to do, but we were wrong. I wasn't, by the way, a supporter of the war, but what I wasn't was a passionate, well-informed campaigner against it, in the way that everybody in this room and on this panel were, and that is something which I rebuke myself for to this day. And of course, the search for truth must go on, and the lessons. I'll talk a little bit about the lessons which are going to be learned. Just briefly, before I do go and do that, I just make a comment about Brexit. And again, I completely agree with you that it's a much more complicated issue than many people have presented it. The way I saw it was that the European Union is a job destruction machine. It is driving people into poverty and unemployment across southern Europe in the most disgraceful way. It's done that in parts of Britain too. And it does so without democracy, i.e. it's enforced unemployment, enforced austerity. I don't even look in the other point of view, because that's I accept that there are I've read a lot of stuff, and friends of mine live not far from Rome, and my friend was with her children in a platform, and they were heard speaking English, and suddenly all the platform came to them and hugged them. So, bless England. Don't believe everything which, because if you live in southern Italy, you know about the European Union, and you know that it has no compassion and is determined to destroy your livelihood. I accept there are other points of view. It's a complicated issue, and I was in that lock-in yesterday morning in the Queen Elizabeth II Centre, and I have to say that first thing I'm going to do is to apologise perhaps to Sir John Chilcot. I had an idea that he was a member of the establishment, that his panellists were stooges. Actually, he's done a pretty good job in my view, and I think we're going to, a lot more is going to come out over the next few days. That report is like a sort of budget where you can only read the conclusions in certain small bits to begin with. I think he's done a job. I mean, there are omissions, we'll come to those too. But for instance, I've been unable to find, in February 2003, it's been reported in 2 books now, I think, that Ron Susskind's book, that an senior MI6 officer went to Jordan to meet the head of intelligence in Iraq's head of intelligence, who told him there weren't any weapons of mass destruction. So actually, we were actually directly informed that these things didn't exist. I cannot see, I've got a long search this morning. There are things where I think Chilcot may have failed. But overall, let's just go through the conclusions. I think that he reached the first and most important conclusion, of course, is that it was not a necessary war. There was no need to go to war, and that and therefore what he's doing effectively is accepting the analysis of de Villepin and Chirac in France and our other Security Council partners, that the weapons inspectors process could have and should and ought to have continued. We then move on to the points about the effects of the invasion. He doesn't hold back. Utter catastrophe, bloodshed, mayhem, murder. And then the sections on the preparation, I haven't read them very deeply, but the sections on the preparation for war and the handling of the occupation, I'm told, are just unreadable in their tragedy, and the marvelling at the incompetence. Sir John Chilcot does not reach a verdict about whether the war was legal or not, but it's very hard to read the section on this without being confirmed in the view, the very strong view, that the war was unlawful and therefore an act of aggression, crime under international law, and of course that it had the most horrific consequences, which in terms of the enfranchisement of Al-Qaeda and later ISIS, it just liberated, it made Britain and the world a much more dangerous place in every way. And I think this is a powerful report, very well documented. Mr. Blair is quibbling on a point that he says he did everything. He said he acted in good faith. He claims that's supported by the Chilcot report. It is not supported by the Chilcot report. The Chilcot report demonstrates again and again that far from just passing on the intelligence, as Mr. Blair claims, he actually distorted, misrepresented it. So that is the report I read yesterday. I think that we need to learn the lessons. And before I get on to the lessons, I would like to pay tribute to the people in this room, on this panel, the Stop the War Coalition. There is no question that we've won over the last 15 years. That our foreign policy has been set for us by the Stop the War Coalition. If the chairman of the Stop the War Coalition had been foreign secretary, and that British foreign policy would have been much better, and the world would be a much safer place. With a series of calamities, not just involving ourselves, of course, but we have inflicted calamities on other countries. That's the great wisdom and learning of the Foreign Office, the Secret Intelligence Service, the CIA, under Penn Downing Street, all these learned scholars. They sent us into Iraq, they invaded Libya, they made a complete mess in Afghanistan and so forth. And I pay tribute to the Stop the War Coalition for opposing all these adventures, which have had such desperate effects, above all for the people in the countries where these interventions occurred, but also back here, causing division, divisiveness. It's a pretty good record you have. I think we need to learn the lessons, and I think I'll look at a few of the areas where we do. One of the big messages which comes through the Chilcot report is the collapse of the practice of government, the fact that cabinet ministers were not, cabinet wasn't told what was going on, the normal civil service procedures vanished, they stopped taking notes, they stopped sending minutes in the right places to the right people. It became focused around the charismatic, but I think ultimately rather naive figure of Mr. Blair. I think our foreign, also a collapse in integrity in British public life. We allowed, the state machinery allowed lies to be put out there. The Secret Intelligence Service should be sceptical, it should warn, it should say, look, these are the consequences, the unexpected consequences of this act. They didn't do that, they became part of the government propaganda machine. Although I do think that MI5 emerged extremely well from that report yesterday. They warned about the consequences in Britain of invading Iraq, the fueling of anger and radicalism and violence, and they were tragically proved right, but they spoke truth to power. The one organisation in British public life which emerges significantly enhanced, in my view. Certainly not the press, and I do come back to the press that, you know, the press fails to mention that as it excoriates Blair and his allies and henchmen, that the press itself was part of the rush to war and the hysteria which was created. It didn't analyse the claims made by the government and actually often made them even more lubricious. Foreign policy, I think we have to really, and Chilcot is good on this, he looks at the relationship with the United States of America, and he clearly something went wrong with the analysis of the British establishment that we had to, never happened before. Harold Wilson didn't go into Vietnam, he stood aside. It's a new thing, this idea that we automatically do what the United States want us to do, and they've always been entirely self-interested. Even Maggie Thatcher probably only got one admirer in this room, I expect. She was furious quite often with Ronald Reagan, with the invasion of Grenada and so forth. I think that we have to move away from that. Again, I think I'm probably the only person in the room. I still think there is a room for foreign intervention, but clearly it has to be thought through, understood. The objectives need to be worked out, and there are all kinds of other solutions which come first. Those are just a few of the. I think we have to brew very, for a very long time on the lessons of this, about what it tells us about the nature of the British state and who we are.
Thank you very much, Peter, for acknowledging that Stop the War called this one right, unlike many other parties over the last 13 years. And also note your comments about the lack of cabinet government and the press itself has got things to answer for in the coverage of the initial attack on Iraq.